Hey everybody, it's Ron, and today I'm going to be starting another book club with Batman because I think he's the fictional character I know the most about. I've been a fan ever since I was a kid. No surprise there because he's one of the most popular superheroes of all time, but it wasn't until I started reading the comics in my early teens that I really got invested in Batman as a character. Sure, the Tim Burton movies were fun and all, but I don't think they captured the real atmosphere of Batman and Gotham. And I think the best way to start is by reading Frank Miller's Batman Year One. This is one of the most celebrated Batman tales along with The Dark Knight Returns, also written by Miller. But it really is a great place to start if you want to get into the comic aspect of Batman because it's very influential not only in its own field but in film as well. Batman Begins, for example, owes a lot to this story, and I think Nolan did probably the best job capturing that vibe in Begins compared to both of its sequels. Year One is also 4 issues long, so it's not a huge commitment. It also helps that it's illustrated by David Mazzucchelli, and it still holds up today. I remember buying this awesome hardcover edition when I was younger, and I couldn't believe that Year One came out in 1987 because it looks so modern compared to the rest of the Bat books coming out at that time. So it really was a perfect storm of creative talent and a great idea to retell Batman's first year fighting crime. I know a lot has already been said about this book, but I felt like I really have to start here with this series and tell you how I feel about this story, especially now coming back to reread it after all these years. So did it hold up after all this time? I'd say yes and no. I remember it being more epic when I was younger, but it's actually a very low-level, intimate story about Bruce Wayne coming back to Gotham to become the legendary Batman. And there are no supervillains yet, so it's a very street-level book with Batman fighting crooks and gangsters. And the surprising thing about Year One is that it's actually a more compelling Jim Gordon story in some ways. Frank Miller gives us a younger Gordon transferring to Gotham from Chicago as a lieutenant, and most importantly, he gives him a lot of layers. His narration really gets you in his head, and he's a very honorable cop, but also deeply flawed because he has an affair with his colleague Sarah Essen while his wife is pregnant with their first child. So it's a pretty complicated situation because you're rooting for Gordon against these corrupt cops like Flass and Commissioner Loeb, but at the same time you don't know how to feel about Gordon running off with another woman while his wife is pregnant. But it really makes this whole world of Batman feel real. This comic also shows that Gordon can really handle himself when he gets revenge on Flass for beating him with a bat, sort of as a hazing because Gordon doesn't fall in line with their corrupt ways. Gordon leaving Flass naked on the side of the road was a pretty badass section of this book, and I love the narration where Gordon identifies what kind of training Flass has and uses it against him. Batman starts out by posing as a drifter and ends up getting in a fight with a pimp who Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, works for, and this was a cool way to have these two iconic characters cross paths for the first time. A standout and now classic Batman moment is when he retreats back to the Wayne Manor, beaten and bloodied, and the Batman is born in that moment where he's talking to his father, saying those famous words, "Yes, Father, I shall become a bat," as this bat flies through the window in a dark room. It still gives me chills whenever I read it. And also when Batman interrupts a dinner with Gotham's most wealthy criminals and utters the line, "You have eaten well." So these are all really great moments, and I love that Frank Miller also doesn't shy away from showing an early version of Batman making mistakes and getting beat up most of the time. It really builds the character up and makes it more satisfying when he does incredibly heroic things like saving Gordon's kid who was kidnapped. And this is a great way to show the bond and trust forming with Gordon and Batman. And it's a great way to end this fantastic story and get you hooked with the Batman mythos and want to keep moving on to the next thing. The teaser at the end is great as well, and I think Batman Begins took something from this at the end as well, when Gordon says that there's a man named the Joker who is poisoning the Gotham water supply. And this story is so great as an absorbing, self-contained crime story that you almost forget that this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. And Batman is going to open up a whole new class of criminals who will eventually shake Gotham to its core. So yeah, obviously I would highly recommend reading this, especially if for whatever reason you've always wanted to get into the Batman comics and never knew where to start. Next up, I'll be talking about a little bit of a lesser known Batman story that takes place in this time period called Shaman. So stick around because there are so many fun Batman stories to discuss and review, and this is just the beginning. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and thanks for watching. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.